Namaskar, my dear students. Hope you are all fine. Now, continuing with the chapter Molecular Basis of Inheritance. Today, I am going to talk about one of the most important topics of the molecular basis of inheritance, and the topic under consideration today is the central dogma of molecular biology. In other words, we call it the protein synthesis. My dear students, the proteins they have a significant role in the structural and the functional organization of the cell. The structural proteins constitute many cellular components and extracellular parts like cuticle, then fibers. On the other hand, the functional proteins, which include enzymes and hormones, they control most of the metabolic, bioenergetic, sensory, then reproductive, and biosynthetic activities within the cell. Now, so far as this word central dogma is concerned, my dear students, I would like to draw your attention towards this diagram where you can see what we are showing, that from DNA, RNA is formed, and from RNA, the protein is formed. The process of synthesis of the protein involves one of the central dogma of the molecular biology. According to this genetics, information flows from nucleic acids to proteins. We know that DNA is highly stable and inherited from parents to offspring. According to central dogma, the flow of information takes place as shown in this diagram from DNA to RNA, from DNA then to RNA, and from RNA a protein is formed. Now this is how it proceeds. Now the synthesis of DNA on the RNA template and in the RNA tumor virus, it was demonstrated by the two American scientists H. Temin and D. Baltimore. The discovery was considered to be very significant for understanding of the cancer. Now, the central dogma of molecular biology, this protein synthesis is called as the central dogma of molecular biology because the study of molecular genetics or the molecular biology today revolves around this simple concept that DNA gets replicated to form DNA, DNA undergoes transcription to form RNA, then the information of RNA is translated to the protein. This is how the protein synthesis or the central dogma revolves. Now, my dear students, the concept of the central dogma or the protein synthesis, it can be studied under two headings. One is the machinery and other is the mechanism. What I mean to say by this machinery and mechanism, that is, we have divided for our understanding purpose, for the purpose of our understanding of the concept, we have divided the concept of central dogma of the molecular biology into the constituent particles which are required and into the mechanism as to how the various things operate to result in the formation of the proteins in the body. The things which are required, they are studied as machinery of the photosynthesis, and which consists of DNA, then various types of RNA which includes tRNA, that is transfer RNA, mRNA, that is messenger RNA, then rRNA, that is ribosomal RNA, various enzymes, then polymerases, etc. They form the machinery of the photosynthesis. Once we have completely understood the machinery, then we come to the mechanism, in which we shall be studying as to how does the various things operate, and mechanism we shall have divided into two steps. First is the transcription, which includes the formation of RNA from the coded language of DNA, and then is the translation, which includes the formation of protein from the heterogeneous RNA. What is heterogeneous RNA? I shall be discussing just now in detail. So today I am in this very chapter, we shall be considering the machinery that is involved to to make it possible for the DNA to be formed into the protein. So we shall be discussing that machinery of the central dogma of molecular biology, and we will start with the concept of RNA. Now, dear students, as you can see in this figure, various types of RNA are included, and actually sometimes the regulatory genes, in spite of they do not code for RNA or protein, but actually for the central dogma of molecular biology, various types of RNA, they are all involved in this process. And what is the case? The first, you can see this is showing the messenger RNA or the mRNA. Then this one is the ribosomal RNA or the rRNA, and this is the tRNA or the transfer RNA. tRNA is of the great significance in terms of its structure as well as its function. However, we cannot underestimate the function of any one of these, but we shall be discussing the tRNA or the transfer RNA in little bit more details. Now, first of all, let us talk about the messenger RNA, the mRNA. Messenger RNA is formed on the specific parts of DNA, that is, when the transcription is occurring. Those specific parts are called as the structural genes or the complementary copy of one strand. It contains and carries instructions coded in DNA to the cytoplasm and finally becomes attached to the ribosomes. This is the function of the messenger RNA. Messenger RNA or the mRNA forms a template for protein synthesis. Normally, it carries the codons of single complete protein molecule and hence is called as the monocistronic mRNA. Sometimes it contains several adjacent DNA cistron, and at that time we call it polycistronic mRNA. Actually, if we go into the detailed structure of mRNA, it bears the cap of methylated guanine and 5' end. The cap is followed by initiation codon. As we have discussed in the genetic code, initiation codon is always AUG and sometimes GUG. After this, a long coding stretch is present on the mRNA. Last, when it comes the last, there are the termination codon. Now I think you better understand the termination codon as we have studied it in the under the topic genetic code, and there are the 3 termination codons, and these are UAA or UAG or UGA, and then after that there is a poly A tail with many adenine type of the nucleotides at the 3' end. Before poly A tail, a small non-coding stretch may or may not be present. Now it is the structure of the mRNA. What is the structure? I will repeat once again. First is the long chain of the methylated guanine. Then there is the initiation codon AUG or sometimes UG. Then the actual coding strand, and then maybe a non-coding stretch, a small one, and then the termination codon. That's all for the messenger RNA, the information which it carries. Then we come to the second one, and that is the ribosomal RNA or the rRNA. Ribosomal RNA is formed from the nuclear organizing region NOR of the chromosome. In cytoplasm, rRNA and the various proteins, they assemble together to form the ribosomes. rRNA differs in size as well as the base content from the tRNA and also from the other RNA classes. Whatever there are the several other RNA classes, it is totally different from them. Actually, this ribosomal RNA is formed from only a small part of DNA molecule, and hence it represents no definite relationship between rRNA and DNA as a whole. For example, in Escherichia coli, only 3.2% of total DNA it codes for rRNA. So it occupies a very smaller portion of the DNA which actually codes for the rRNA. Now I shall be discussing the third one, and that is the tRNA or the transfer RNA. As I said to you earlier, that this is of little greater significance in terms of its structure as well as its function, and we shall discuss this RNA in little more detail. And let us see in this diagram. You can see this is shown the transfer RNA, which is actually a three-dimensional figure, and if for our understanding we have opened it up like this, and what we find it in, let us talk about this. Now transfer RNA has also been as soluble RNA or the supernatant RNA or adopter DNA. These are the different names given to this rRNA. Hence, soluble RNA we call it sRNA. It is soluble in 1 m sodium chloride, hence called as the soluble RNA. tRNA is formed on the tRNA gene of the DNA. tRNA is single stranded, but it takes the shape of the clover leaf. Now this is the shape of the clover leaf because actually this is single stranded, which we can see like this is a single stranded structure, but at certain places it is showing certain pairing like this one is the pairing, and this pairing is because at certain places there are the complementary strands which give it the double stranded picture, but actually this is not double stranded, it is actually a single stranded structure with at various places it is showing the complementary base pairs, and hence it shows the pairing. The tRNA has been worked out in greater detail. This is due to the reason that tRNA molecule is smallest. It is made up of just 100 or less than 100 nucleotides. All of the three kinds of non-genetic types of the RNA, it is formed from the DNA in the same way as the messenger RNA. Now I said that it is showing the clover leaf when examined in two-dimensional structure. However, in three-dimensional figure, you can say it looks like the L shaped. It looks like the L shaped, but our understanding is better if we see the two-dimensional figure. Each tRNA molecule can pick up particular amino acid. The tRNA has a G tail. You can see here it has a G tail. It has a G tail at the and a CCA at the 3 dash end. At the 5 dash end there is a G tail, and at the 3 dash end there is the CCA at the end always. CCA end is meant for the attachment of the amino acid. Here the amino acid which is going to form the protein comes and joins at this place. Hence this place is called as the amino acid site, binding site. Four key regions you can identify here. What are these four regions? The first region is the ribosomal recognition site, and this is ribosomal recognition site. It is the place where the ribosomes are attached on the transfer RNA at the time of the protein synthesis. Then there is the anticodon site. It bears three unpaired bases of, this is the anticodon site. It bears the three unpaired bases of the ribonucleotides which are complementary to the bases of mRNA which has been formed from DNA, and so the coded language is being converted over here into ultimately into the proteins. Base triplet in messenger RNA, as you can see here, the base triplet in messenger RNA, here it is GAG. This base triplet in the messenger RNA which codes for one amino acid, on the mRNA it is called as the codon, and complementary to this GAG on the tRNA is CUC, because G will code pair with C and then A with U and G with C. This triplet on the tRNA is given the name anticodon. Amino acid activating synthesis enzyme recognition site. Next is the this one is the amino acid activating synthetase enzyme recognition site. This is there, and there is also a dihydrouracil loop which is called as the DHU OM. Now carrier end, it acts as a amino acid binding site where it is actually the amino acid is being carried. Now this is the detail of the tRNA, and now using these various tRNAs and using various enzymes and the polymerases, now the process of protein synthesis starts. And the protein synthesis, when it starts, because we are talking about the machinery, so it contains a transcriptional unit, the unit which is DNA. On the DNA there is a transcriptional unit, as you can see in this figure. There is a transcriptional unit, and what we see in this DNA, that a DNA has the three regions. The first one is the promoter region, then is the structural region, and then is the termination region. This one is the structural region. DNA dependent RNA polymerase is able to catalyze only in 5-3- direction, in this direction. Now this is very important point, that DNA dependent RNA polymerase which is required here, that is able to catalyze only in 5-3- direction and never in the 3-5- direction. Now due to this reason, DNA strand with 3-5- functions as a template. This DNA is called as the template strand. During the process of transcription, second strand DNA, which is with 5-3- sequence with the same sequence of polymers as in the RNA. Now you can recognize what I meant to say, that DNA on the 3-5- direction, when it will code for the mRNA, that mRNA will have the same sequences as the complementary strand of DNA, except that the uracil is substituted for the thymine. This DNA strand, which is actually not taking part in the transcription, is displaced. And very interesting to mention with you, that this non-coding strand is actually called the coding strand. For defining a transcriptional unit, reference is always made of the coding strand, because it makes our study easier to understand the base pairs. Now in this diagram you can see promoter is present on the 5- and 5- and upstream. Now this one is the promoter, this one is the promoter end. The promoter and the terminator is exist on the extreme site. On one end there is the promoter end, on other end there is the terminator end. DNA sequence provides a binding site of the RNA polymerase. Now inheritance of a character is influenced by the promoter and the regulatory sequence of the nucleotides which are present on the structural genes. Now such regulatory sequences are sometimes called wrongly as regulatory genes, in spite of the reason that these sequences do not take part in the RNA or the protein, but it's just a nomenclature for our understanding of the purpose. Now since we are studying the machinery of the protein synthesis, it would not be wrong to mention here the concept of one gene, one enzyme hypothesis. Now what is this? Actually, the modern work of the biological genetics began with the discovery of the very well-known popular scientists Beadle and Tatum, who are known to work along for the Neurospora, and this Beadle and Tatum, they were studying this particular organism Neurospora at Stanford University, California, and they were studying the spores of Neurospora with the help of X-rays. What they noticed, that how they came to the concept of one gene, one enzyme hypothesis, little information to be added to your knowledge, that they noticed that the spores fail to grow on the usual medium. Such spores survive if the nutritional supplements as the amino acids and vitamins are added to the medium. Beadle and Tatum, they actually developed a technique in which they took the minimal medium. Minimal medium means a medium which is just required to make the growth of the fungus possible, which was including some salts, sugar, biotin, etc., a collection of the amino acids, and that was okay. It was found that the spores had not undergone and after that they exposed these mediums, various test tubes, to the x-rays. What they found that the in this is very important for students you to understand how they came to the concept of one gene one enzyme hypothesis. It was found that the spores which had not gone any mutation, because x-rays are bound to bring the mutations, they could germinate on the minimal medium. It means everything was there in the fungus to form the particular type of the growth. But mutated spores, as was possible due to the exposure to the x-rays, had to be supplied some additional amino acids which was no longer visible. Actually, what was happening, this was indicating them that if one gene is destroyed, one enzyme is not synthesized, and that has to be supplemented from the outside. This gave them the idea of the one gene one enzyme hypothesis. And now one more term I would add to your knowledge, that I would add to your knowledge that the uh, mutants which stop forming one or more essential compounds, they were called as auxotrophs. This I am just giving you the definition that what is auxotrophs. In contrast to the originals were called as the prototrophs, and the mutant, whenever they recognized it, and how they could recognize it, that which was requiring the addition of the supplemented materials from the outside, they were given the name auxotrophs. Auxotroph for arginine, if arginine was to be supplied from the outside, auxotroph for citrulline, arginine, and accordingly. So this gave the concept of the one gene one enzyme hypothesis. And afterwards this concept, because it had a very firm footing and additional knowledge to the concept of molecular biology, it was made more precise by the concept of one gene one polypeptide hypothesis. Now what was it? It is known that the genes control the synthesis of all the proteins. Some proteins are enzymes, some are hormones. As we know that the proteins are made up of amino acids, are the polypeptides, long chains of amino acids. Now one protein can be made up of two or more polypeptides which are linked and twisted around each other, for example hemoglobin. So it was better because hemoglobin of our blood, it consists of 4 polypeptide chains, 2 alpha and 2 beta. So the concept of one gene one polypeptide hypothesis is considered more nearer to the truth, and hence it also came into existence. So this is all about the machinery of the central dogma of molecular biology, and next time when I meet with you I will discuss the mechanism of protein synthesis, which will be dealt under 2 headings: transcription and translation. Thank you very much. God bless you. Stay safe. And my dear students, if you have any queries